Before we begin, a big thanks to Wanted Dead for sponsoring today's video. Hey, it's Lemon. Welcome to the Backlogs. Got a little fun fact for you all. Did you know? Dark Souls 1 has a mechanic that lets you transmute your weapons into boss weapons. What do you mean you knew? What are you, some sort of gamer? Okay, well, have you actually used those weapons before? No? Well, look who just got taken down a peg. I'm just kidding, please don't leave. In any case, if you've ever wanted to see how good, or much more likely terrible, those particular boss weapons are, have I got a treat for you. Today, we're going to play a little game. It's known as Gun Game in CSGO, but for us, I think it's more appropriate to call it, Sword Game. Weapon Game? Yeah, Weapon Game, that rolls off the tongue nicely. The rules are simple. Whenever you beat a boss, you are given their weapon. You must then use this weapon to kill the next boss, which will give you their weapon, and so on and so forth. Here's the tricky part. Most of these weapons aren't usually unlockable until the middle of the game, and therefore have some incredibly high stat requirements. So we'll have to find a way around that. Also, a good number of them are, shall we say, extremely situational. Which means if we don't want to get stuck, we're gonna have to plan out our route. Something I'm sure I'll do perfectly and without any issues whatsoever. And finally, as someone in the comments is undoubtedly already typing out, some of the bosses in Dark Souls don't drop weapons. So how on earth are we gonna work around that? Oh, sweet summer child, you asked too little of me. Of course I found a way around that. You'll just have to wait and see how. But finish your comment. YouTube likes it when you finish your comment. So, with all of that established, let's start
playing a game that has been described as a bit confusing yet charming and irresistible.
What?
I'm of course talking about Wanted Dead, the game created by the same talents that brought you Ninja Gaiden and Dead or Alive.
Wait, what does this have to do with anything?
It's the Dark Souls of Gunkata games.
I'm gonna go get a coffee. Do you want one?
Yes, please. Wanted Dead is a cyberpunk hack-and-slash action game that might as well be a love letter to the cult classic games of the PS3 and Xbox 360 era. Play as Hannah Stone, a hard-boiled cop in a dystopian version of Hong Kong who finds herself embroiled in a major corporate conspiracy. Slice and dice your way through enemies, or blow them to bits with an arsenal of guns. Or, better yet, unleash your inner Gunkata and do both at the same time. Destroy your opposition with brutal finishing moves, put down synthetic uprisings, and engage in gripping, action-packed, karaoke? Sorry, uncover the conspiracy of a lifetime as you... Wait, why is this an anime now? Nope, wait, it's a side-scroller. Ramen simulator? Wait, is that the super hot fire meme? Look, this game is something else. You want gun customization? You got it. You want skill trees? Yep, that's there too. Oh, look, grenade skills. And if you want cult classic voice acting, well, this is definitely some of the most voice acting of all time. So, if the charm of the madness and uniqueness that is Wanted Dead speaks to you, I've got good news. If you hurry, you can get Wanted Dead for 50% off on Steam until July 13th. And if that's not your platform of choice, it's also available on Epic Game Store, PS4 and 5, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox One. Get it while it's hot using my link in the description.
Hey, here's your coffee.
Oh, thanks.
You know, this is nice. I like being sponsored by other video games. It makes you a lot less violent. Anyway, let's get this run started, shall we? The first boss of the entire run is the Asylum Demon. A simple fight. You'll forgive me for saying so, but several commenters have made the point that if you take the game from the enemy's perspective, Lemon, headmaster of the Firebomb Academy, is the final boss any of them ever see. So with all the grace that title brings me, I use the Black Firebomb starting gift to kill the Asylum Demon with ease, which then gives me the Demon's Great Hammer. And so my suffering begins. Because fun facts about the Great Hammer, it requires 46 strength to wield, and is so heavy that you medium roll with it even without anything else equipped. I'm sure that won't be a problem later. Needless to say, I can't use this. For anything. After posturing on Oscar for a bit with my rock-hard jerky gams, I make my way out of the asylum and take the Velka Express to Lordran. So here's the thing. We've got a few souls to spend, and because we chose the bandit class to start, we can level up our strength to about 16. A solid start, but not nearly enough to make this weapon work. There's plenty of loose souls lying around that we can take advantage of, and this will help boost my strength a little bit more, but again, not by much. For those of you who don't know, we don't actually need 46 strength. If we two-hand our weapon, our strength gets multiplied by 50%. Which sounds like a lot, but in actuality means that we need 31 strength before we can even wield this monstrosity of a weapon. And while we're slowly creeping up on that number, I'd rather not lure dreglings off of cliffs for several hours just to have a weapon. But I've got a better idea. I'll grab all the souls I can find, and do what little I can with that, but the real strategy here is to run immediately into the Taurus Demon fight. Now, I know what you're thinking. Lemon, you don't have a weapon that can fight the Taurus Demon, let alone the crossbow men that take pot shots at you the whole time. What are you doing? To which I say, don't lie to yourself. You know exactly what I'm doing. And I'm not above doing it. We're gonna let the Taurus Demon do all of the work. For better or for worse. Getting him to smash his buddies is extremely easy and consistent, so that's not a problem. But getting him to move the way I want him to move is another story. Oh look, Lemon doesn't know how to mid-roll. I'm sure that won't be a problem later. I looked all over the internet and talked to several Dark Souls veterans about how to make the Taurus Demon jump backwards after he attacks, but the best answer I got was, the Taurus Demon jumps backwards when he thinks you deserve it. So yeah, this is our life now. Or at least the next 45 minutes anyway. Honestly, had I known it was going to take this long, I probably would have just ground out the souls. But hey, victory is ours. And with the Taurus Demon souls added to my collection, I now have enough souls for... Oh, that's only level 24. Guess we need to grind anyway. But hey, at least we've got our next weapon now. The Demon's Great Axe. I mean, I can't use it, because this one also requires 46 strength. But hey, such is life. And luckily for us, we now have access to the Drake Bridge, which means we can generate about 555 souls every 30 seconds or so. It's not much, but it's honest work. And after a not insignificant amount of time, I finally reached 31 strength, which means this axe is no longer just for show. Oh, that's much better. Don't get me wrong, we're still not dealing the kind of damage I'd like to see, but 200 plus damage is definitely an improvement over just dealing 2. And while the Great Axe's moveset leaves a bit to be desired, it's not the worst thing I've ever worked with. I take my axe on a test drive around the Undead Burg, with not unpleasant results, and after doing my due diligence that I would do in any challenge run, like upgrading my Estus Flask, it's time to test out the Great Axe against the next boss, the Gargoyles. It's a bit slower than I'm used to, and the medium rolling is really causing me to take a lot more damage than I'd like. But once the second Gargoyle comes down, it's just a matter of focusing on the weaker one until it dies, then taking what is rightfully mine, the Gargoyle Tail Axe. And with the Gargoyles soundly defeated, we can move on. Oh hey, the Gargoyle Shield. Forgot about that. This weapon is weird. Not only does it boost a bunch of your resistances, hence the status bars there, but the moveset is, well, you've got eyes. Look how bendy it is. Technically, we could use the Gargoyle Halberd as well if we wanted to, but the only thing interesting about the Halberd is that it too increases your resistances. And, I don't know, it's green? Nah, I'll take the Axe and Shield combo, thank you very much. And with that, we've rung the first bell. Moving right along. I show off the wacky moveset to Lautrec, who is so impressed that he tells me to take his ring, then make my way through the lower Undead Burg, which, contrary to every other challenge run I've ever done, is actually not too bad. I always forget what it's like to use a regular weapon in this game. I should do that more. But after a short while, I'm able to reach the Capra Demon, which, thanks to having a shield and decent weapon, is also relatively painless. Taking out the dogs is easy enough once I reach the top of the tunnel, and while the damage isn't the best thing I've ever seen, it's certainly enough to work with. Just dodge the boss's attacks, return fire whenever he takes a breather, and before you know it, Capra Demon goes down. Oh god, the dogs! I forgot about the dog! Dog bites aside, we now have access to the Demon Great Machete. Honestly, there's not much of a difference between this and the last two demon weapons that we've had. I do like the bony aesthetic though. That's pretty cool. The moveset isn't much to talk about. You can do this little jumping slam attack, or you can just slice and dice like you'd expect. But for what it's worth, the damage is nothing to balk at, so I can't complain. The nice thing about this run is that it's relatively straightforward. There's no dilly-dallying around with upgrades or anything like that, since all of these weapons are usually upgraded with Demon Titanite, a resource I do not have in large supply. So, with nothing else to do, we're moving right along to our next boss, the Gaping Dragon. Not much to see here. Hitting him in the head does about 300 damage, and even a normal swing does about 200. Oh, by Fletchy, I forgot to kill the sorcerer. You know what? It's fine. Everything's fine. See? Got my next weapon already. And it's not like we can't dodge the sorcerer's soul arrow, and he's buffed the Gaping Dragon. Okay. Yeah, this didn't end well for me. But hey, did you know? The Gaping Dragon can jump up and kill the rats and the sorcerer if you lure him close enough to the wall. So, you know, let that bit of information live rent-free in your brain today. The second attempt goes much smoother, and with that done, we now have access to the Dragon King Great Axe. This thing hits a bit harder than the other weapons we've used thus far, and has a special shockwave attack we can do as well. Oh, it also looks like a mushy Oreo on a stick when you look at it from behind. At least to me. So that's a thing, I guess. But with mushy cookie in hand, I make my way into Blighttown, dishing out chocolatey vanilla goodness as I go, then push my way into Quelaag's domain. I probably could have worded that better. Nothing to really see here. I'm still mid-rolling, and probably will for a majority of this run, but my brain is finally remembering how the iframes for this weight class work, and the weapon itself is doing a fine job of smashing spiders. I probably should have taken advantage of the shockwave attack at some point during this fight, but in all honesty, I really didn't need it. And with that, Quelaag goes down. That's the second bell rung, and my next boss weapon acquired. Good job, me! With Quelaag defeated, I had the option of either taking Quelaag's Fury Sword, which is a curved sword that does decent fire and physical damage, or the Chaos Blade, which does great physical and bleed damage, but costs health to use with every swing. Needless to say, I felt like the Fury Sword was the better choice. But with the boss list starting to thin down, we've got something we need to consider. It's at this point that we need to start carefully choosing our targets. After all, some of these boss weapons are complete trash if you don't have a completed build to go with them, and the less time I have to grind to accommodate for required stats, the better. So with this in mind, I decided that my next target should be the Moonlight Butterfly. This boss is as easy as they come, but can be really annoying if you don't have a decent weapon, mainly because it only gives you a few moments to hit it before taking off into the sky again. Thankfully, with the Fury Sword, it only takes 2 rounds of swinging to get the job done, and the butterfly goes down without much issue. Which means we now have access to the 2 most interesting looking weapons in the game, the Moonlight Butterfly Horn Spear and the Crystal Ring Shield. The spear is an amazing weapon. It does pure magic damage, which very few enemies have defense for. You can turtle attack from behind a shield, and it feels like you can poke all the way across the screen. The only problem is that it works best with an intelligence build, which I am not. Which means that my damage is less than impressive. But that's okay, because next up on my list, aside from getting the doll, is the Stray Demon. And just like everything else in this part of the game, it's an easy fight. Is this because of the leg thing earlier? Anyway, let's get into it. This should only take a few... maybe if we two-hand it? I mean, that's technically better. What about the shield attack? Alright, well, that's something, I guess. I hate to say it, but this is just going to be a slog no matter which way you cut it. But it's for this exact reason that I chose to fight the Stray Demon with this weapon. As big and brash as he is, he's very slow and predictable, which takes a lot of stress off the fact that my weapons do next to no damage. And with minimal focus and a lot of glowing dinner plates, the Stray Demon is whittled down to nothing. Death by 1,000 cuts. So, with all that said and done, there's not much else we can really do in the early game. And with my Demon Catalyst in hand, it's time we move on to Sen's Fortress. But Lemon, I hear you say, that's a catalyst. You need spells to do damage. Ye of little faith. I'm actually more excited about having this staff than any other weapon we've had so far. Honestly, if you haven't stabbed something with this thing, or tried the melee attack of the Tin Banishment Catalyst, are you even living? Let me just insert this selfless plug here. But as exciting as having this thing in my hands is, our time with it is going to be short-lived. Against the Iron Golem, it does nice little chunks of damage, which means an easy fall loop. And though my aim was completely off both times I was able to knock him over, that just means I get a little more time with one of my favorite weapon types. Farewell, Demon Catalyst. You were fun while you lasted. And who knows, maybe we'll see each other again sooner than we think. But with the Iron Golem defeated, it's time to head into Anor Londo, and towards one of the harder bosses in the game. At the moment, we've got 2 weapons to choose from, the Golem Axe and the Dragonbone Fist. And I'll be honest with you, both of these weapons are, well, they're awful. The fist is slow, heavy, and does fist amounts of damage, and the axe, while significantly better, still doesn't do nearly as much as I'd like, especially with ONS coming up. Their movesets leave a lot to be desired as well. The Golem Axe has your typical axe kind of moves, though it does have a long-range attack that I can't use because I don't have enough strength, naturally. As for the fist, the only thing worth noting here is that it has an uppercut attack, but it takes forever to go off, and against bosses it's probably completely useless. Works fine enough against humanoids though, I guess. But with Ornstein and Smo looming over my shoulder, we need to arm ourselves with some real weapons, and there's only one place we can get them. Thankfully, the enemies of the Painted World aren't exactly beefy. They just hit really hard if they connect, which means, so long as we're careful, it's a brisk walk to Priscilla, and, hopefully, our prize. Now, gimme that tail! One thing the Golem Axe does have going for it is its poise damage. 2 hits with this thing and Priscilla's invisibility is toast. Which means the rest of the fight is less about winning and more about stealing the fluffiest thing in Lordran. And though it was a bit closer than I'd like, Priscilla's tail is eventually mine. And you know what that means? The Lord of the Dance has made his inevitable return. Dance until you're dead. But with both Priscilla's dagger and the Life Hunt scythe in hand, I think we're ready to face the duo who is so well known for separating the chaff from the wheat. Let me just make my way past the Anor Londo archers real quick. And there we go. Ornstein and Smo, at your service. Now normally, I hate this fight, but with the Life Hunt scythe in hand, we're doing some incredible damage. And if we attack quickly enough, we can make... oh yeah, bleed goes both ways. Well, that's alright. We may not have the bleed resistance, and there's no way I'm going back to get the bleed ring, but if we just take our time, we can... Now hold on, the hammer counts too? He didn't even take damage! Ugh, that tilted the scales just enough to ruin this attempt too. What a bummer. But hey, not bad for a first attempt. Almost made it to phase 2. It takes a little while to get into the groove, what with Ornstein doing what Ornstein does best, but eventually, I found the rhythm I was looking for. and once that worked itself out, it was just a matter of hitting Smo with bleed damage over and over again. Pro strats, we got him. As for Super Ornstein, he doesn't take as much damage from the scythe as Smo does, but it's nothing to scoff at. And although I made an almost fatal error with my attack timing, a little go-go juice was enough to keep me alive. And eventually, with several sharp slices to the knees, Super Ornstein finally goes down, which means we now have access to Smo's hammer, the Dragon Slayer spear, and the Leo ring. I talk to the catfish, get the Lord Vessel for all of my trouble, and take a minute to celebrate my victory. After that, I place the Lord Vessel back where it belongs, then make my way down to our next target, Pinwheel. Just like the Moonlight Butterfly Horn, this spear is fantastic, if you've got the right build for it. And unfortunately for me, my build is very low on faith at the moment, and has just enough dexterity to wield the thing. So we're not going to be doing amazing amounts of damage anytime soon. But that's okay. I grab the Seance Ring for later, get bullied by the Tony brothers for a bit. Please stop, I just want to leave! Then, bleeding from several new cuts, arrive at Pinwheel, who is, surprisingly, not going to go down as quickly as normal. I mean, yeah, this will only take 20 seconds instead of 5, but still. You've been working out, Pinwheel? That's great, man. Good to hear you're taking care of yourself. But now, the ultimate question. What mask has Pinwheel decided I'll be wearing for the rest of the run? You know, that's actually probably the best I could have asked for. I know it's not technically a weapon, but Pinwheel doesn't really use weapons, and it is a boss drop, so, you know, close enough. But that means we're stuck with the Dragon Slayer spear a little bit longer, and I know just how to get rid of it. Ceaseless, my dude! How's your family doing? Still chaotic? You don't mind if I steal from your dead sister, right? What? It's not like she was using it or anything. So yeah, as anyone who's fought him this particular way knows, Ceaseless is a complete pushover. Just hit him 5 times and he goes down. You know, in retrospect, I could have taken the Child's Mask as my quote-unquote weapon, and then just punched Ceaseless to death. Ah well, run ruined. Start over. Though I will say that this is the part of the run where things have to get a little more loosey-goosey. Ceaseless, for example, doesn't drop a weapon of any kind, and his attacks are all just a bunch of tentacles. So, thinking outside of the box a bit, I decided that one of his attacks is basically Fire Whip. You know the one, where the fire just explodes in a straight line in front of him. And, considering that this damage is awful, I don't think anyone is going to complain too much. But with the power of the Dark Moon Seance Ring and Pyromancy gloves on both hands, just for style, we've arrived at the next target, Gwendolyn. The fight itself is extremely easy, so I'm not worried about that. What I'm really worried about is the damage. This is the first weapon we've had that has a limited supply of ammunition, and the charge time is also no joke either. But from what I'm seeing here, we should be okay. It takes a little testing to get it right though. Turns out, if you're too close, the attack only hits 1 time instead of 2, and we need every hit we can get. But with proper spacing accounted for and just the right amount of enthusiasm, Gwendolyn goes down. Which means it's time for something completely different. Say hello to Nito, and the Dark Moon Bow. There's not a whole lot to this bow if I'm being honest. The only thing that sets it apart from the other bows is that it does physical and magic damage, but not very much. But it's enough to keep Tony down in one shot, so I'm not going to complain. It's just so weird that it does magic damage, but has 0 intelligence scaling, you know? If I'm being completely honest, I wasn't really confident in my routing on this one. This bow can take down the minions, but only 1 at a time, and they respawn so quickly that I barely have enough time to get a shot off on Nito himself. Thankfully, Nito hates Tony just as much as I do, and occasionally helps to keep the mobs at bay with his own attacks. It's not consistent by any stretch of the imagination, but so long as I keep my distance and keep the minions in easy range of Nito's attacks, it's not too bad. And with a few more shots from downtown, Nito goes down without too much trouble. That's the first Lord Soul down, and only 3 more to go. Hell of a good start. So, with Nito's greatsword in hand, it's time to talk about the next big problem. One of the harder bosses in this run, as far as I'm concerned, is going to be the 4 Kings. And the reason for this should be obvious. They're a DPS race, and considering I only have a few weapons left to choose from, it's incredibly important that I pick the right one to use against them. So, with that in mind, I pay Sif a visit, which, honestly, goes better than expected. The Gravelord sword has a very quick rolling attack with great range, and the overhead slash is high enough to hit Sif as well. First try Sif. And what does Sif give to you when you beat her? Artorias' greatsword and shield. This weapon combo is probably our best shot against the Kings. It has decently high damage and better defense than anything else we can muster for the remainder of the run. Now, it's not perfect. The 4 Kings can still chip away at me with their attacks, even with this giant shield, and my attacks are slow enough that it's difficult to dodge out of the way of incoming hits. I'm also mid-rolling again, which means just more opportunities for incoming damage to land, and also means there is 0 chance of me outrunning the grab attack. So that's cool. But with enough Estus and concentrated blows, my gamble on whether or not this would be the weapon set to defeat the 4 Kings pays off. The DPS isn't high enough to kill the kings fast enough that only one spawns at a time, which means that I'll occasionally get attacked from multiple sides, but hey, what else is new? And with the 4 kings defeated, we now have their weapon of choice, the Dark Hand. What, you wanted the 4 kings sword? What do I look like, a modder? This thing is by far the most fascinating weapon I've had all run. It does 200 damage with a basic punch attack, has a strong attack that can drain humanities from other players and NPCs, and when used in the left hand, can parry or create a censoring shield. Where the hell was this thing when I was editing the Dead Space video? But yeah, absolutely broken. I'd go out of my way to do an entire run based around this thing. And I just might. But there is one problem with this weapon. Its range. It only extends as far as your arms. And considering the next target I had in mind was the Sanctuary Guardian in the DLC, well, this is going to be rough. The damage itself isn't a problem, but I can tell you right now that it won't be enough to kill the Hydra before cutting off all of its heads. Which means it's time for old Wonky Head here to do what he always does and make my life more difficult than it needs to be. Thankfully, I'm very familiar with this particular problem after doing the daggers only run, so I know a trick that'll help. Just run up on top of these rocks over here, sit patiently in a corner for Wonky Head to do his thing, then, if you time it just right, there you go. Hydra dead, first step of accessing the DLC completed. The rest of the steps are just a formality at this point, since we just need to kill 2 crystal golems and we'll be home free. We just need to access the... hello there. Why are you so upset with me? Maybe your chakras are misaligned. Let me show you a technique Koth taught me. Now we just open up your key flow and... Oops. Oh, okay, wait, I see what I did wrong. I'm supposed to breathe new key into you. There we are. How does that feel? You know, it might be time to stop. So, with the broken pendant acquired and a trail of accidental bodies left in my wake, it's time for the DLC. And while the Sanctuary Guardian isn't the easiest boss I've ever fought, the Dark Hand attacks fast enough that there's no real danger to worry about. So, with a couple well-timed dodge rolls and a few solid punches to the rear, the Guardian's tail whip is now mine, as is his remaining life force. Oh man, I missed the Dark Hand already. But hey, at least we've got this abomination now. Yeah, no, I don't like this thing. I don't know what it is, but something about the way this weapon moves is just gross. But there's no time to be squeamish. It's time to fight Artorias. The damage is bad, and the strongest attack I have time for, the running strike, isn't all that much better. The only real strength this weapon has against normal enemies and PvP players is that it causes poisoning. But against Artorias, it's just another mediocre whip. Thankfully, it does just enough damage to knock Artorias out of his charging phase, so long as you hit him right as he starts, and are able to squeeze in 3 hits before he finishes. But it's definitely a close call each and every time. But, as with all things, it's only a matter of time before Knight Artorias goes down. Probably could have picked a better weapon for that, but such as it is. And hey, we've got Artorias' greatsword again. Or rather, the cursed variant of it. Look, it's technically a different weapon, okay? Read the lore. Speaking of lore, what better weapon to face Manus with than the weapon that failed to defeat him the first time? It takes me a little bit to remember how to use a greatsword. I'm definitely not a big sword, me hit kind of guy. But once I realized that I can't get greedy with my strikes, things turned out alright. I mean, I still got greedy, which Manus was more than happy to capitalize on. But eventually, despite several goof-ups and a comedy of errors, the Father of the Abyss goes down like all the rest. Which means we now have access to the Manus Catalyst, and all the slow bonks that entails. We've still got Calamite to deal with in the DLC, but I've got enough experience with fighting him with a staff to know that the Manus Catalyst ain't it. And besides, the Demon Fire Sage is just Stray Demon 2.0. There's no reason to waste a good weapon on him. Truly, this will be the battle of the ages. Staff versus staff. One school of magic against the other. The age-old question of fire versus dark finally answered. Oh wait, one of Manus' weapons was Darkbead. Anyway, time to go back to Calamite and finish the DLC. But I'm not alone. I decided to bring a friend along for the ride. His name is Gubbins, and he's very eager to play. Maybe a bit too eager. Come on, Gubbins, let's go get some shinies. There's 1, and there's 2, and... Huh, that's strange. I don't remember the Weather Channel calling for a firestorm today. Oh god, it hurts! Thankfully, I've done this whole song and dance once before. The Demon Catalyst isn't exactly the best weapon for the job, but we're down to the last handful of bosses before this run is complete. And I have a very specific order of operations that I need to follow. Besides, I've fought Calamite enough times at this point that I know his moves and timings. Finally, after years of playing, the DLC has reached the same level of comfort as the base game for me. It takes a few tries, but eventually I chip away at the Great Calamity, and with one final thrust of my staff, the Black Dragon Calamite goes down. DLC complete. Only 4 more bosses to go. Calamite's tail weapon, the Obsidian Greatsword, is easily one of the coolest looking swords in the game, and its special ability, an AoE blast effect, is no joke either. Unfortunately, the special ability won't be any use against the Centipede Demon, due to it being fireproof, but something tells me that won't matter much. I cut off the Centipede's arm, killing the separate demon that it spawns, and obtained the orange charred ring early on into the fight. And with the Obsidian Greatsword having plenty of reach, I can actually just stand below the demon and swing away to get my damage in. And after a few more swings of my sword, the Centipede Demon goes down on the first try. And now for the fun bit. The last boss didn't actually have a weapon of any kind, and doesn't have a boss soul to transpose either. I mean, technically it throws fireballs at you, so one could argue that fireball is on the table, but I think this is more of a pinwheel situation. But unlike pinwheel, the Centipede Demon did actually drop something that does damage, because if you equip the orange charred ring, you suddenly have fiery kicks. And while the damage is absolute garbage, we don't need a whole lot of damage to kill the Bed of Chaos now, do we? I roll my way through one orb, then roll my way through the second, and now, boys and girls, let me show you how it's done. This is a stupid game. Right, moving on. As far as the Bed of Chaos is concerned, the only attack it has that I can replicate is its second phase Firestorm. The good news is that the Firestorm attacks are very strong when they connect. You can even one-shot most of the bosses in this game with it if you build around it properly. The bad news is that we are once again working with a limited amount of ammunition. And since I can't use some of the things that would make this spell a one-shot, one-kill kind of spell, like Power Within or Dust's Headset, we're just gonna have to hope for the best. I did equip the Dust Crown Ring, which gives you 50% more casts at the cost of 50% of your health, but unfortunately, Seath wasn't all that interested in getting hit by the pillars or lava pools. In the interest of keeping the run alive, I also brought Firestorm to help push the fight along, but kinda forgot to keep an eye on Seath. Oh god, please no curse, please no curse. Whew, that was a close one. Thank you, Dark Souls. Alright, round 2. Change of plans this time. I got the Bellowing Dragon Crest Ring and the Red Tearstone this go around, so we've got a good 70% boost in damage as opposed to 50% boost in spellcasts. And despite Seath once again deciding that he doesn't want to play in the pillars I'm setting up for him, it's just enough to get over the finish line and knock him out of the fight. Time for the final push. And what better way to finish the fight than with the iconic weapon that makes its way into every Soulsborne title. Have at you, Gwyn. May your sword chip and shatter. And there you have it. Every boss in the game beaten with the previous boss's weapon. More or less. I hope you had fun, and maybe even saw a moveset or weapon you've never seen before as well. I know I did, and I can't wait to incorporate a couple of them into future challenge runs. But until then, that's all I've got. Thanks again to Wanted Dead for sponsoring today's video, link in the description. And remember, take care of yourselves, be good to one another, and I'll see you all again soon.